Chapter 6. The Eve of Migal's 11th birthday, still written by Ben in black ink. Christmas passed by. Nothing happened. We ate gruel and felt miserable. And then it was New Year's Eve, and also the eve of Migal's 11th birthday. Still nothing happened. We ate gruel for lunch and felt miserable. Then, before our evening meal, Theevil came into the dining hall looking all bright and happy. "We're having a guest to dine with us this evening," he said, "this very fine New Year's Eve." Invictus looked as if he was going to burst with excitement. "Tell them to bring our guest in," said Theevil, nodding at Invictus. "Yes, bring the moron here." After a short while, two of Thieves' thugs dragged someone into the room. We all gasped when we realised that it was Blizzard. He was dressed in rags, blindfolded, and clearly didn't know where he was. "Hush," said Theevil, holding his fingers to his mouth. We knew that the Blizzard was blind as well as blindfolded, but the other boys didn't. Some of Thievil's thugs started teasing him by pinching his arms, pulling at his sleeves, touching his toes, and then drawing back so that Blizzard couldn't reach them when he swung out to make them stop. In the end, Blizzard sat on the floor and refused to move. "Stand up," commanded Theevil. Blizzard didn't move. "Do as you're told," said one of the thugs, kicking Blizzard. Blizzard stood up and said, "What do you want from me?" His voice was so blank. It was as if all the life had been leached from it. "What do I want?" sneered Theevil. "As if you could give me anything." Blizzard shook his head. Then Theevil said, "You blind, idiotic fool. You always thought you were going to be such a hero, and now look. You're no one. You're nothing." Blizzard didn't reply. "Here you go, boys," said Bishop Thieve. "This blind, stumbling idiot thought he could be a school captain one day, but look, he's going to be sent to a school for students who can't see, who can't think, and who certainly aren't going anywhere with their lives." Some of the cruel boys jeered at Blizzard. One yelled out, "He's a nobody." "He certainly is," said Invictus, glaring at all of us as he spoke. "That's not fair," shouted Jax in her deepest voice. "It's fair if I say it's fair," shouted Bishop Thieve, "and don't shout in my presence." "There are rules about fairness," said Jax, still using her deepest voice. "Rules?" said Bishop Thieve, laughing. "I make the rules." "Not all of them," said Jax. "There are rules about how students are to be treated, and there's also the very famous rule of rescue." Bishop Thieve stared at Jax, his face as full of pride as it's possible to be. His nasty smile made me feel sick to my stomach. Blizzard hung his head, and I felt like running forward, tearing off his blindfold and yelling at him, "You're a time wizard! Rise up! Fight for yourself!" As if he'd heard my thoughts, Invictus said, "Blizzard, the future time wizard, why don't you use some of your magic?" Bishop Thieve sauntered over to Blizzard and flicked him on the nose and then clipped him on the back of the head. And then, looking back at all of us, he said, "As principal, I get to make the penalties. So if someone's willing to spend the night outside in the mud, I'll stop tormenting this fool." Chapter 6.6. Migal tricks Theevil. We all sat there dumbfounded, none of us thinking that Theevil really meant it. Laughing at us, Theevil held Blizzard up in the air and threw him at Ghoul, who caught him in his arms and then threw him to Invictus. Catching him easily, Invictus threw Blizzard back to Theevil. "A basketball," said Theevil, "but maybe he'd be a better football." Theevil dropped Blizzard onto the floor and drew back his foot as if he was going to kick him. "All right," he said, "before I start my football game, let's invoke this rule of rescue. If any idiot in this room is willing to spend, I don't know, 1100 years in a wheelchair on behalf of this excuse for a student, he might have some hope. But what kind of a fool would offer to sacrifice his freedom for this useless human being?" I could see that Theevil meant all of this in an offhand way as he leered at everyone in the room. But to my surprise, Migal jumped up and put his fist into the air and shouted, "Done!" Theevil scowled at Migal and said, "Sit down." Migal shouted even more loudly, "In the name of the most ancient code of magic and its indelible rule of rescue, I say done. I say I will do it, and you cannot refuse this proposal because I offer my legs freely, according to the most ancient code." Everyone gasped as a huge bubble appeared in the room. It was every colour in the rainbow, and it shimmered before us. For a moment we were filled with the most amazing sense of kindness, along with a huge dose of calm and love. Bishop Thieve raised his arms into the air and shouted, "No!" Migal roared, "Too late! I do this for my friend, and I want everyone to note it, that I choose to do it." As he spoke these words, the rainbow bubble snapped, sending a shower of smaller bubbles all over us. There was a sudden hum, and an old-fashioned wheelchair flew into the room. It had little wings on its wheels, and it was made of pure gold. Migal suddenly collapsed to the ground, his legs unable to hold him any longer. From within the wheelchair emerged two angels, who lifted Migal into the wheelchair, adjusting his legs into position and then stroking his head. "You have shown great kindness," said one of the angels. "Immense compassion," said the second. "Be gone!" shouted Thieve to the angels. "You are not welcome here." But the two angels swooped over Thieve's head and caused his hair to stand on end. "Get out!" shouted Thieve. "You have no right to be here, and before you go, turn that wheelchair into a common, clattering thing. I command you." We all stared at the angels, scarcely able to believe what was happening. The angels hovered in midair, their wings slowly wafting up and down. One had the appearance of a woman and the other a man. "It will always fly," called the male angel, "but if you want it to look another way, do it yourself." The female angel blew a trumpet, and we all felt our spines tingle. "For 1,100 years shall Migal remain seated in his flying wheelchair," called the second angel, "according to the penalty set by this heartless villain." As she spoke, the angel pointed her finger at Theevil. "But he shall not sit in the wheelchair for a moment longer," said the male angel in a loud voice. "And if you had a heart, Bishop Thieve, you'd reduce the sentence right now, you vile non-wizard, you thief of all that is good." Bishop Thieve shrieked at the angels, "Leave!"